Hey there, Gazbot coming at you. It's day 59 of 100 Days of Making Comics, and it's day 1 of San Diego Comic-Con. Sunlight rays streaming on my face! Tastes like rain.
Look everyone, here we are at the con, the San Francisco con, even though I keep calling it San Diego. I was in row B, although my table was C9. I liked that they had a carpet. It was kind of a garish carpet, but it was nice on the feet, especially because I tend to stand at my booth. And this little video right here is the sum total of the time I spent on the floor. I was late there getting set up, and then I stayed at my table the whole time because I was relatively busy and had nobody to watch it if I left. I'm going to cut into me telling you all the great things that happened today right about now.
Done a bad job of documenting my day. It's literally over. I'll tell you about it later. Yeah.
$4 coleslaw.
I earned that. Oh man, I'm back. Hey, did not do a lot of filming at the show today. It was crazy town. It got busy for Friday during the day. It was much busier than I thought it would be, and there wasn't even a lot of signage. So I guess just a lot of people bought tickets ahead of time. I'll talk to you about it more. I'm back now. It's about 8. The driving there and back wasn't as bad as I thought, but I'm exhausted for a bunch of various reasons beyond just the show. So I made myself a cup of caffeinated coffee, even though it's 8 o'clock at night, and some Pop-Tarts without toast. And I'm going to go ahead and eat them and just sit here and veg out for a minute, and we'll talk again later.
And it's later. I decided to go ahead and use my clamp to do my best job recording myself drawing these commission covers while I tell you about the con. This first one I'm working on, I started at the con, as you could tell, I had the inks done, but it was a color commission, so I went in with my Copics, and I kind of went crazy on the visor. I was trying a new effect. This is the Green Ranger on a Power Ranger comic, which I was commissioned to do in color from the waist up. I have another one that I'll start after this, which was the White Ranger, just the head in color. But basically, the show ended up being good, and I have 2 more days still, but it started terrible. First of all, I had to get up early and go up there, and that was no fun, but the traffic wasn't that bad. So I actually made it up there pretty quick, and the parking is crazy expensive. It was like $25, and I think tomorrow it's going to be $35 because it'll be a weekend, but there's no getting around that. They had valet parking. It's at the Marriott Marquis, and the valet parking is $65. So the parking lots, there's one across the street and one a little bit down the street, and they're both about the same. And considering I had to carry all my stuff on a hand truck, I couldn't afford to be more than a block or 2 away. So I parked across the street, unbeknownst to me, because when I came out and put in the GPS, it said I was about a mile down the road or half mile, whatever. So I walked, and I had my backpack loaded to the brim, and I had everything on my new hand truck that I bought, which did work really well, but it still got heavy. I had a full backpack, I had a soda little cooler, I had my Copic markers in my hand, and I had the hand truck in the other. And after like 5 or 10 minutes, I was getting pretty tired and sweaty. And then I realized I went in the completely wrong direction, because you ever notice how sometimes GPSs don't update, and like I stupidly didn't keep checking it. So I had to go all the way back, and that's when I found out I was literally right across the street. So I gave myself like a 20-minute walk with all that heavy stuff for absolutely no reason. And I was drenched with sweat by the time I got in there. So I go in, and it opened at 12, and by the time I got in there it was close to 11. I had wanted to be there closer. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I had wanted to be at my table at 10. I should have, by the time I got in, it would have been about 10:30, but I didn't get in until closer to 11 because a woman came in and helped me and was like, "Oh, you're an exhibitor?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know where to go." And the signage wasn't great, but eventually I found my way there, and then she showed me the rest of the way, and she's like, "Oh, I'll get your pass." And I'm going to tell the short version of this story. Well, why. Basically, she started leading me in, and I didn't have a badge, and people were like, "Whoa, you can't go without a badge." And she's like, "No, it's okay. He's with me. I'm going to take him to go get his badge. He's an exhibitor." And they're like, "No, but you can't go in. And she's like, "What do you mean? I'll get him the badge. It'll be fine, you know?" And they were like, "No, you can't bring the hand card in there," meaning my hand card that I bought the other day. And then I was like, "Okay, so I got to like make 4 trips? What do you like?" And because I thought because I'd be blocking up the aisles or something, but nobody was allowed in yet. Like it was still an hour and a half before the show started, so I didn't understand. And I'm like, and they're like, "No, you can't bring it in through here at all." And I'm like, "So do I have to go to the loading dock?" Because there was a loading dock thing the night before, and they're like, No. And it was just like they weren't really like they were just saying you can't, but they weren't really explaining themselves very well. So I brought it out, and basically the guy was that's the finished product of the Green Ranger. I'm going to start the White Ranger now. The guy was some representative I don't know if he was representative of the union or he was a union worker or whatever, but basically, and this is all kind of stuff I figured out after the fact. He was from the union, and the woman that was helping me was from the con, and there was another woman that like got drawn my attention to who was from the convention center, the hotel, and so basically the woman from the con was trying to help me, and she's like, okay, well, you know, and he's like, you can only, I'm like, well, I guess I'll carry it. It'll take me a couple trips, and like, no, no, you can only take one trip, and she's like, okay, I'll get some people to help you, and then we'll all take one load and it'll be one trip. And he's like, but and you can't do that. And like they sort of argued a little bit. I argued a little bit, but I didn't quite understand where the situation was at. And while this was happening, she's like, I'm gonna go find so and so. I'll be back in a minute. And I'm like, okay. And then the woman from the convention center was like, here, have a seat. And I'm like, oh, is it gonna take that long? Because I wanted to get in there and set up. And she's like, oh, blah blah blah. And she's like, here, fill this out. And it was like this, all the paperwork with my name and address and credit card. And I'm like, don't you have all this? Like, I already paid online, didn't I? And she's like, let me look. And she found my name and she's like, no, you didn't pay. And I thought I had, but I'm like, well, I guess I'll pay. And if I double paid, then I'll like, you know, stop the credit card payment or whatever. So I put in all the info and I had to put in like my name. And I'm like, you don't have a square? And she's like, no. I'm like, you don't even have like one of those old fashioned back and forth things. It was all paperwork. It was really weird. And it took forever. And while I was doing that, the original woman came by and like, oh, here's your passes. Don't worry, you don't have to go get them. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And she's like, here's the number of so and so if you need help. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, great, thanks. And she left. And so I get all done, and I then you know I pay the money, and it was like $100-ish bucks, which is about what I remember the table costing. So that was fine. And so then I get up, and a guy from before had come back, and he had like a big flatbed pallet kind of thing. And she's like, he'll help you over there. And I'm like, oh, so we're gonna put it on that and bring it in? He's like, yeah. And then the thought occurred to me, I'm like, why would they be doing this? Is there some kind of charge, like a, you know, valet charge or something? I'm like, well, is there, that's fine, but there's not going to be a charge for this, is there? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, that's what you just paid. And I'm like, wait, what? I thought I was paying for my table, and that's why I was telling you I already paid for it. And she's like, no, you just, I'm like, whoa, stop. Don't do that. Don't charge it. Because it was $100. And I'm like, I did not agree to that. I don't want that. Don't stop taking it. I don't want your help. I don't want to pay $100 for this. And you have to understand, I had carried this hand truck up and down, you know, like a mile out of my way, made it all the way through the convention center, all the way up to the door. I could pretty much see my table. It was like a 5-second walk. And I'm like, no, that's fine. I don't need this. And he's like, well, then you know, you can't use your hand truck. I'm like, what do you mean I can't? Like, I'm like, okay, then I'll carry it, but it's gonna take more than one trip. No, you can only take one trip. It's like, these rules make no sense. Like, and then they started getting really like ruly, like, oh, it's in the packet. I'm like, no one ever said this to me. And they're like, well, it's in the packet. And I picked up the packet. I'm like, it's like 30 pages. I'm like, if I'm being honest, I didn't read this because I glanced through it, but I didn't read every detail because I do 10 shows. Everybody has a 30-page packet. I said, is this a weird San Francisco thing? Because I haven't done, they're like, no, it's a union. I'm like, I've done 10 shows this year, mostly in California. No one has ever stopped me from bringing a hand card in. They're like, oh, and they were acting like it was standard. That's the thing that was really getting me. So I'll take responsibility that I guess they put something in the packet where, and again, this is all stuff I learned after the fact, where like union rules say you essentially can't bring a hand cart in. You're only allowed to bring in one armful that you can carry. So if I was super strong and had huge arms and could like carry the 100-something pounds of stuff, I could have done it. But even if I was willing to power it out, I couldn't physically carry everything. I'm like, it's physically impossible for me. And they're like, well, you know, that's the normal thing and blah, 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 blah. You should have read the rules and, you know, and so I was really annoyed because, yeah, arguably I should have read it, but it's never been a thing that even crossed my mind before. You know, it's kind of like when they say, oh, if you want lighting, fill this out. And I just ignore it because I don't want lighting. So like, oh, if you need help, you know, from the union moving in your equipment, I'm like, I don't. So why would I read it, you know? But I don't know if all other cons just don't enforce this rule, or if this con, you know, and basically like, oh, well, the convention, it's a union rule, and this convention center abides by union rules, blah, blah. And I'm pro-union, generally speaking, but this is ridiculous. Like, I'm an artist that needs to walk 5 feet to my table with art prints. Do I really need a union representative to be involved in this? I'm not taking a job from someone. I'm not doing unqualified work. I'm not, you know, a scab of some sort. This has nothing to do with anybody. And I understand why the law is there so that like big conventions and Marvel can't set stuff up using their own people and whatever, but that's not this situation. But to them, it is. And I got pretty mad. And I started yelling because it's like $100. I'm like, it's $100. I didn't know I was going to spend. This is ridiculous. And I, you know, like, we can't do anything about it. We don't set the rules. I'm like, look, I'm not mad at you, lady. I'm not mad at you, dude. But I'm very mad. And if this is what, and I almost walked out. But I'm like, I drove up here. I'm going to lose $100. And so I fine. You guys can't help me. We're going to do it. But I'm probably never going to exhibit here again because this is ridiculous. And I've never had to deal with this. And again, at the end of the day, they're right. It is my mistake. But it's like kind of an easy mistake to make. And I know for a fact I'm not the only one that this happened to that was yelling feeling about it. So and they're like, yeah, a lot of like we made the table prices cheaper because then we didn't have this included. I'm like, I wish you did include it, because if it was like 150, $200, then I know what I was getting into, make an informed decision if I thought I could make that much money, as opposed to getting here, thinking I was only paying X amount and then suddenly being banged for this charge, which is ridiculous. Like, if it wasn't $10 or $20, it was $100 for him to take everything off of my cart, put it onto his, and I bit the bullet and I did it, but I made sure they knew I was unhappy about it, not that they care. And then I'm walking with the guy. Look, man, I know this isn't your fault, but like, you got to admit this is ridiculous. Money aside, I feel stupid walking next to you. What do I got, a broken arm? I just walked up and down a mile with this. I clearly could walk another 5 feet. He's like, yeah, well, what can you do? Blah, blah. And it wasn't even a help. He walked 5 feet, threw it at my table, and then I still had to set everything up for the next hour. So it really made me mad, and it set a really bad tone for the beginning. And not only did I have to pay this money and have this big argument, but because of that, I was now setting up late, because it takes me an hour to 2 hours to set up, depending on how involved I get. And I was kind of roughly set up, but the next hour I was still setting up while people are coming in, which is a huge pet peeve of mine, and I hate it. And so the whole thing just started bad like that. However, my neighbors were nice on both sides, and I chatted with them a bit, and the sales were pretty good, and the crowd was pretty good for a Friday. I made table. Now, here's the real kicker. I made table, and if I didn't have to pay that 100, I would have made a good amount of money just today, and I would have been pretty happy. But and the parking didn't help either. But I had to pay the table, the friggin' walk this 10 feet for me, and the parking. So I didn't make any money today. If I have a day like today tomorrow, then I'll be in the black. And if I have another day like this Sunday, then actually it'll end up being a good con. But if I didn't have that fee, I would have made money today. And and everybody I talked to was like, what? That's ridiculous, and blah, 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 And then the guys on the one side of me was like, we used hand carts, but I guess we didn't get caught. And it's like, oh. And the guys on the other side of me were like, yeah, I table at cons all the time. I've never heard of that. It's ridiculous. They're like, but we read it, so good, good to them that they read it. And so they're like, yeah. And they just had some comics on a table and kind of had a very basic setup. And like, normally we have a big backdrop and all this other stuff, but we couldn't bring it because it would have been an extra $100 to bring that. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. So, I don't know if I'll go back again. I mean, if I make enough money, I guess I will, and just not bring my whole backdrop, but it's really disappointing. That being said, I did have a fairly successful day. I had a lot of good conversations. Got these 2 commissions. Like, as I said, I wanted to push the sketch comic covers, and I got 2. One I started, the other I decided to do at home. I was busy enough that it was hard to do them while I was there, which is a good problem to have. So, that's where I'm at now. I did go out to eat after at Mel's Diner, which was kind of a mistake because I didn't really love the food, and it was way more expensive than I remembered. But I'm coming to the end of the White Ranger here. I also remembered I forgot to do my 30 minutes. I was so wrapped up in being done with my last mode, and now I'm in, I'm just going to the con. But no, I still got to do 30 minutes. So that's going to be coming up next in
All right, I started
Not
editing the video that you're watching now, and then, like I said, I realized I had to do my 30 minutes. My voice is almost gone. Well, it's not almost gone, but it's like permanently raspy at this point because I kind of never recovered from Power Morphicon, and then today, talk. And I usually bring a bottle of water and a couple sodas. My water bottle was dirty, so I just brought some sodas, and I sweated a ton, and so I'm just kind of dehydrated and raspy. But I'm really annoyed at myself for not remembering the 30 minutes because I did those 2 covers, and that's great, but I didn't have to. I could have done them tomorrow at the show. I was just trying to get ahead of the game, and that's going to cost me sleep or whatever because I got to do my 30 minutes, and I got to take a shower and then do this video. I just made a cup of coffee, and it's decaf, so I'm hoping, because I don't want to be up all night, but I'm hoping that the placebo effect of just the niceness, and I used one of my special mugs, my BB-8, keeps me rolling. Oh, so clever. Okay, I've done my half hour on the Horror A4. It was a little weak and uninspired. I probably should have gotten more done at the time I put in, but I put it in. It's done.
If you remember this panel from last time, I lowered the shading a little bit, and then I added these little tac-tac sound effects to remind myself. And I got to figure out the orientation here, but I want to have a clock in the background because there's going to be passage of time being shown, and that's one of the methods I wanted to use to do that. Then I skipped around down here to find what was another semi-easy panel of Boots leaving the library, talking to the librarian, and the door, so I didn't have to worry about a lot of other background or match reference to anything. And the only real creative decision I made is I started filling in the inside dark, but then I realized it's going to be nighttime. She's leaving, the light would be coming from inside, and as stupid and arty as this sounds, it's also, the illumination of knowledge. I feel stupid saying it. Anyway, that's what I did.
All right, so that's it for day 59. I'm tired, and I need to get up even earlier tomorrow. What have I done? I need to feed the cats. I need to edit this video and take a shower. But this is the last time you're going to see me, because that's the end of today for you and me together. Today, what day? 59. That's right. And if today's Fay, then that means... got 41 days left. No. Not quite done yet.